What's up, y'all? What's good? Welcome to the What Up Doe Show. It's your boy Dame D, and I am back with another one. Today, we're going to be talking about a situation. Why is it always the black person end up dead when hanging with their white friends? That's today's topic, and I want to apologize. We were supposed to have been doing another show. I'm going to do that another day. I just want to come in real briefly and talk about this situation. And I'm going to wait for a few people. I'm waiting for my guests to come in. And I'll wait for a few people to jump in before we start tonight's conversation. But that's the topic. Why is it always the black person end up dead when hanging out with a group of white friends? So I'm going to wait for a few people to check in, and let me check my audio and video to make sure that I can be heard. So here we go. Okay, so I'm just trying to check my audio and video. Okay, so I can't be heard, so I'm gonna go in there and stop and come out. So yeah, just waiting on a few people coming in. We were supposed to have been doing a I had another topic that we were supposed to have been doing, but I had to come in and talk about this situation today. You had and like I said, I'm gonna wait for a few more people to jump in, and then I'm gonna wait for my guests. I'm gonna try to wait for my guests to come in, and then I'll go in and start up tonight's conversation. But before we start up the conversation, I need for you guys to make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Your boy is less than 60 subscribers away from 1K. So I cannot do it without you guys hitting that subscribe button. So please hit that subscribe button. It's going to definitely help your boy out. We knocking on the door. We right there. Yep. So, but yeah, you guys see the title. This is kind of stemming from, the ongoing search that they were looking for Nolan Wales. So I'll go in there and start the conversation. I'll wait for Big Ken to come on in. But yeah, we just recently there was a search going on for a young man, Nolan Wells, who had went out on an island out in Mississippi with a group of white friends, and he had been missing since pretty much since the 4th of July. And it was a 40-hour search, and they found this young man body today. So that's pretty much been the talk all over social media. So I just want to come in and give my give my talk about this situation. It's an unfortunate situation. They found the body of this young man. They don't know the cause of death yet. The autopsy, the body has not probably, but is going to be sent out for autopsy to be done, and then they're going to be waiting on the autopsy report to come back. But in my opinion, man, it sounds like the same old plays that we've been hearing and then that we've been watching over the last few years. It's the autopsy is probably going to come back. No foul play, or this young man committed suicide or something like that. We just had a case, and we just did a show a few years ago where you had a young black woman that was out over at a sleepover with a group of white women, I should say, and they found this woman dead outside said she was drunk and had fell over the balcony. So it's mighty strange and mighty suspicious. When we're always finding blacks dead when hanging out with a group of white friends. And it's the same play that's been ran over and over and over again. And you got to ask yourself, what's really going on? So that's pretty much the logistics of this whole situation. The mother, and the father. Like I said, I want to give my condolences to the family of this young man. He was a junior college football star, had his whole future ahead of him, just going out for a night of partying, a night hanging out with a group of with his friends, you know what I mean? With his so-called friends, because what group, and what's so kind of strange and funny about this situation, these friends have not been questioned, from my knowledge. you know, in my from my knowledge, the friends have not been questioned about this situation. They have not been questioned by the authorities, I should say. They have not even spoken to the mainstream media. You know, and this is supposed to be your friend. When you have a friend that's out there missing, you're going to be one of the main people out there on the news. You're going to be trying to talk to the authorities about, you know, or try to see how you can help try to find or locate your friend. But neither one of these, and there was three of these. It was actually a group, but it was three of the main people that he was. It was three people that he was mainly with that day. You know, but it was a whole group, and they showed the pictures and they showed everything, the activities that went on throughout that day over there at that island. You know, and they even had conversations. A conversation was talked about that he had spoke with, that he was out there hanging out with a young woman out there too. You know, so that's another scenario that could have happened. But you know, at the end of the day, man, where was these group of friends that he went out there and was hanging with? You know, for them not to have any answers for the authorities or for his parents, you know, to me it seems funny and fishy, you know, that you did not see any of these guys on the mainstream media talking, or the authorities have not talked to any of them. You know, word was basically said that none of these young men were spoken to or in custody with the authorities. You know, so again, this situation seems fishy to me. I would love to hear you guys. The comment section is open. I would love to hear you guys' thought, your opinion on this situation. It's all, like I said, it's always, you know, the black person ending up dead when they're hanging out with a group of white people. Like I said, we just did a case where you had a young black woman who was hanging out with a group. It was a sleepover with a group of white women. And then the next day they found this black woman dead outside. Said she fell over the balcony. They were drinking that night and they said she fell over the balcony and that's how she died. But there was no charges brought up upon the friends that was there partying with her. You know, and they actually did not know what happened. You know, they all said that they woke up and they found her outside laying on the ground that day. You know, kind of like what a lot of the situations we've been hearing about, you know, throughout the years. But yeah, you know, we're waiting on the autopsy report to come back. Hopefully the family gets answers that they need, you know. But more than likely, man, it's going to be the same old play that's been running play after play. You know, it's going to come back either this young man committed suicide, you know, or no foul play, that it probably was, you know, a drowning or something like that, you know. But the friends should have something to say. They were out there partying with this young man all day, taking pictures. You mean to tell me that you left your friends and you don't, this guy out there, you would leave this island without coming back with your friend, you know? So that right there, you know, is something shady altogether in itself. You know, so like I said, the comment section is open. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. I would love to hear your comments on this situation. Why is it when you have a black person, you know, whether they're a male or female, it always seems like, you know, when it's a black person hanging out with a group of white people, that black person always end up dead. You know, it never fails. You know, well, I'm not going to say it never fails, but you hear about a lot of situations. It's never the other way around. It's always the black person ends up dead or hurt. You know, but I got Big Ken coming to the stage to join us. What up, though, big dog?
What up, though?
What up, though? Go on and introduce yourself to the show.
It's Big Hen from 313.
Okay, there we go. Welcome back to the show, bro. And I was just breaking down what happened, and I'll go ahead and re-break it down to you and those who may have not heard, you know, when I first started talking about it. It was a situation where you had an 18-year-old young man, Nolan Wells, who was celebrating the 4th of July with a group of his friends. You know, they went out to an island. I believe they said that they took a boat ride to this island. I forget the name of the island. It'll come to me in a second. You know, but this Horn Island or something like that, it was out in Mississippi, you know, and that's a whole nother story too that we're going to talk about, you know. But anyway, this young man went out with a group of friends, and these friends were white friends, you know, and this young man came up missing, and today they found his body. You know, so give me your thoughts and opinion, you know, because like I was just telling everybody, you know, it's the same old play that's been run over and over. You know, you had a black woman that was at a sleepover with a group of white women, and they found her body outside the ground, and they said that she fell over a balcony that they were drinking that night. So to me, man, it seems fishy. The friends that he was with, they're not. Neither one of those guys are has been apprehended by the authority. The authorities let these guys go, no questioning or none of that. So they're just waiting on an autopsy report to come back. So give me your thoughts and your opinion on this, Big Ken.
Wow, that's unfortunate that we got to hear about another black person coming up dead the way that person was dead. It's just, we got to wake up, black people, see what's going on. We got to stop sending our black kids away and not knowing where they're going and if it's going to be safe for them. If they're the only black, we need to do some more investigations because
Yeah,
it's just happening
because
a
you had a
little
lot.
bit more often.
Yeah, because
It's
you had a
happening
lot
a
of
little
people that
bit
was talking
more
about
often.
this. Go ahead, my bad, Big Ken. Sorry about that.
No, it's just happening too much right now. So it's got to be a red flag right now.
Yeah, listen, look, if this is not a red flag to everybody, especially with all these hangings that's been going on throughout the country. We just found the young woman on June the 18th, during Juneteenth, found down in Florida hanging. You know what I mean? And recently you found another young man that was hanging. I forget the story, but we've done multiple stories of black men and now women being found hung. So this is another play, in my opinion. It's always the black person that ends up dead when hanging with a group of white friends. So we have to get to the point where, if you're going to be hanging out with a group, you have to make sure that you're not the only black person when you're hanging out with a group of white people. Because this is, like I said, this is an ongoing story, man. And we've done multiple stories about the same type of scenario.
And I got a question. It seems like all of this is happening in the southern states. Is this correct?
Yes, this happened in Mississippi.
So, it seems to me that it's some Jim Crow stuff playing out right before our eyes.
Yeah. We have to be smart about these situations and smarten up, man. We have to really realize what's going on to our people. We are being targeted, in my opinion. Hopefully this
Yeah.
situation comes back where, this young man may have been out there drinking, and there's multiple people actually saying that he was drinking and there was no foul play. But normally in situations like this, man, why would their friends, why would you leave? First of all, why would you leave your friend? If you came together, what's the word? If you came together, you leave together. They left this man.
Right.
They said they did not know what happened to him.
Mm.
So it sounds fishy, man. There's been too many stories, like I said, that we've done this year, on black men and women coming up dead. And he was with a group of his friends. I'm going to read out some of the comments too. You said, Marcus Wag said, we are being targeted. That's a fact. Yes, we are. And this goes back to, all these lynching and hangings that we've been talking about. Oh, yeah. And it was, like I said, we just found it was just another young man at a college right after the young woman on Juneteenth that they found hanging from a fence, and I have to go back and look at that story. Like I said, we've done so many stories of this recently. I'm starting to forget. These stories are starting to pile up. But yeah, I just recently done a story about that, Big Ken, where you found a young man. He was at the at a Job Corps. They found him hanging from a fence at a Job Corps. And this was just a week ago.
Mm. Yeah.
So this. Go ahead.
Everything can't be a coincidence. So.
Yeah, it's not.
And it's not. So, we just got to wake up and, like me and you both said, you got kids, family, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephew, and they mingling with other races and they happen to be the only black there, it's red flags going on right now.
All day long. Especially in these days and these times, you don't know who to trust, especially when it comes to being with with a group of white men, because in situations like that, man, I can go and look up multiple stories that's out there where you have young black men and women, hanging with a group of white women or men, and they're always coming up dead, but it's never you never hear about this story being the opposite way around. So that lets you know, man, we're being targeted. You know, we're we have to wake up and realize what's going on. We're behind the eight ball. If we don't realize that we're being targeted and we have to do something about this, this shit is going to continue to go on, Big Ian.
Yeah, it's just imagine if you got a kid going to college and they go to a predominantly white college and all their friends is white. You gotta get on top of that right now.
Yeah, man. Because let me say this to you. I'm from originally from Detroit, Michigan. I went to the University of Toledo. I've been in the situation where I was and this was my first time being around a group of white folks. I was at a situation where I forget what it was like not a rave, but like they had like it was like just a big gathering, a group of white folks. And I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lie, man. I was nervous. Really, I got the fuck up out of there because my spidey senses went off and something just really told me to leave. So we have to start recognizing when, especially the things that's been going on throughout the country, man, with all these lynchings and hangings and just black people coming up missing altogether. We definitely have to be careful or make sure that you let people know where you're going to be at, and then you just make sure you travel with somebody that looks like you.
There you go.
Yeah, because like I said, man, this is it's gotten out of hand. We definitely need to speak with our children about making sure that they let people know where they're going to be, making sure that they have some type of security with them. If not, if not a firearm, but some type of weapon to be able to at least try to fight your way out of the situation. But this man was surrounded. He was on an island, surrounded by a group of white men. So ain't no telling what happened.
Mm,
Yep, and
you're
that's
right.
just like
You
the
don't
story
know.
with the black. That's like the story with the black woman that happened maybe about a year ago, and I forget her name, but she went to a sleepover with a group of white women. They all were drinking, and then the next day they found her outside. And they said that she fell over a balcony.
Mm,
Yep. So
yeah.
I just want to talk about this a little bit, man. It's getting out of hand with, all of our people coming up, missing some way or in some type of fashion. Either drowning, dead, or just being shot by the police, man. It's a lot of fishy shit that's been going on throughout the country for the last 2 years, man. And we have to really wake up and see what's really been going on with our people. We're being targeted.
Yeah, we got to be aware too because there's still a lot of shit going on where people need kidneys, livers, and organs and stuff, and black people is being targeted more than anybody. So it's more than one thing that we got to be worried about. It's just being aware. And it's red flag. So there's nothing wrong with being aware and letting your children and family members know what's going on because we as black people we tend to keep things to ourselves and don't spread the news. Bad news spread fast, so we gotta let people know.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, man, I hate for, because I know a lot of people are going to try to say this sounds racist or something like that, but you have to put one and one together, man. When you continue to find black people ending up dead when they're hanging with a group of white people, you got to call it for what it is.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
and these were supposed to be in a group of friends that he was with. They left him. So called the authorities are really not from what we're hearing, are not investigating these so-called friends that he was out there with. So pretty much, man, they're waiting on an autopsy report to come back, and what always comes back when they do these autopsy reports.
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with putting trackers on your kids' phones and stuff like that because we live in that time. So it's whatever you got to do.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it may have to resort to a situation like that, especially when, you're dealing with, teens and things like that. This was an 18-year-old man who had his future ahead of him, so they can't come back with, no shit like he tried to commit suicide. So, they're probably going to come back and try to say he was out there, he was drunk, he ended up drowning. But, in a situation like that, his friends should have been out there and they should have saw that. So they
yeah,
can't probably. I'm going to say they can't even say that, because if he was in a situation where they all were drinking, and they were all out there, someone should have saw this man get in the water or drown or something like that. You know what I mean? So, in my opinion, it sounds fishy. It sounds like someone took this young man's life. In my opinion.
it definitely sounds fishy, man. And being that it happened in a southern state, I would more than say that it's probably a lot more than fishy. It's we gonna see. I'm hoping that it was not the case of somebody taking his life, but
Yeah,
if
because
it happened down there, more than likely that's what happened.
yeah, and white folks, you got to ask yourself. We have to ask ourselves. Y'all always make it seem like you guys are not safe around blacks, but we got to ask ourselves this question: are we safe being, around you guys? With all these, so-called suicides that's been going on with these hangings. And at the end of the day, man, when have black folks have started committing suicide by hangings, Big Hen? And that pretty much make me laugh every time I hear that situation. You don't hear that. You don't hear about blacks trying to commit suicide by hanging themselves. And like we talked about that, most black folks don't even know how to tie a tie, let alone tie a noose to be able to properly hang themselves.
I'm trying to tell you, it's just something that we black folks and ropes don't get along. Period. So uh, you can cancel that one. You know,
Yeah, and I just don't
we ain't hanging
understand it
ourselves.
when, every single time when you hear about one of these cases where, they're saying it was a hanging by suicide, there's never no evidence, there's never no foul play or anything like that. So, a lot of people are thinking that, and every time you hear about any of these lynchings or these hangings, and even with this young man, it's always in these southern states. You know what I mean? So you have to pretty much, like I said, man, call a spade a spade.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
how else would, if these people are not committing suicide and they're being found hung from trees, how else would because it's going to take more than one person to be able to tie you up and hang you from a tree. You're going to need multiple people to be able to do this. So in my opinion, you're gonna for them, in order for them to get somebody out of their car or get them out of what they're doing, it's gonna have to be some type of law enforcement or someone with authority, meaning law enforcement, that will get them out of their car and probably will be able to handcuff them. Therefore, they will be helpless and won't be able to defend themselves. So that's why a lot of people, in my opinion, think that the authorities, have a lot to do with a lot of these hangings that we've been seeing going on down in these southern states, Big Ian.
I mean, either that or the Ku Klux Klan is very prevalent in the South still. So they just did a march somewhere in, I think in Washington. It was a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
they
them.
did a
So
march. They did a march on the 4th of July. It was
yeah,
it was
so
I forget the group. It wasn't the KKK, but it's a group like the KKK. Aryan Nation group, I believe.
okay. So
Yep.
you know, in those southern states, y'all black people down there, y'all stick together and let each other know what's going on. Because it's not just a coincidence that black people is hanging and drowning.
Not at all, and for them to keep coming back with these results every time they do an autopsy or find somebody, they have to think that we're stupid, to keep believing that, this same shit is happening. Like I said, it's rare, and I'm not saying that a black person have not never committed harmed themselves, and committed suicide, I should say, by hanging themselves, but it's rare. You can probably count on one hand how many black people in my lifetime that I've heard that you can legitimately say that they literally committed suicide by hanging themselves, so it's rare. I don't think it'll happen. And like I said, most black folks and black men don't even know how to tie a tie, let alone be able to tie a noose to be able to support them hanging themselves. But yeah, man, I don't want to get off the topic at hand. This young man, I hope they get the justice, the family gets the justice that they're looking for, because at the end of the day, this young man definitely needs justice. He went out there with a group of so-called friends that he thought he was going out there, that he thought he was going to be safe with, and ended up losing his life. And even if it's not no foul play, what type of friends would allow him to, to drown or leave him out there without, trying to find him?
That part. Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear more about this story, man. It's sad that we got to keep on reporting stuff like this, but we got to make everybody aware of what's going on in the South. Because that's where it's happening. At we haven't heard about anything like that really in the city or in the cities. Period. So you know, I'm hoping that more podcasts and white, black, whoever is reporting this because it need to be reported. You know,
Yes,
so
you have a lot of white folks that talked about this today that I saw out there on social media. So, it's definitely been talked about. It's definitely been spread throughout social media, which it needs to, because this was a horrible situation. You had a young man with a future ahead of him that went out on to celebrate the 4th of July with a group of friends that end up dead. That's horrible.
and don't nobody know nothing. That's really the horrible part about it. It's not that we making a big deal about what color his friends was, but whatever color they was, green, purple. If you my friend, you supposed to have my back. And if I'm drinking and I'm not being myself and I'm high acting or anything of that nature, you need to let me know. Hey, bro, let's get you home or whatever. So no one did that, and this young man just came up dead. So it need to be an investigation.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. We're not trying to make it a racial thing, but it was already made a racial thing by, a black guy coming up dead, being surrounded by a bunch of white men. You know what I mean? So, that scenario right there, it calls for question. But this young man thought he was safe. He was out there with a group of friends and still end up losing his life. So at the end of the day, man, I just want to come on here and talk about this for a little bit, give my opinion, give my thoughts on the situation, because like I said, we've talked about plenty of stories where you had black men and women, that was fraternizing and hanging out with so-called white friends that end up dead, and it's always the same old play. No foul play every time, so you got to ask yourself a question, man, like what's really going on?
Mm.
So Big Hen, we had a topic earlier that we were supposed to talk about, but we did not do it. We're gonna have to do that for another day. What else you got on your mind, man? What's going on? How your day been going?
Uh, we've been having a lot of hot days in Detroit, Michigan. So today, yesterday was a good day. The air is a lot better to breathe in and everything. So I'm just happy to report that we've had some decent weather. After we did have a little bad windstorm up here a couple of days ago, knocked out the
Yeah, that's
power.
another story, man. DTE got to get it together. What is it with every time it's a storm down there that the power go out? Do DTE and the city got a contract with every time
Right.
the power? Because it's a lot of money that's being made when these power outages go out.
Yeah,
And
from
it's
what
been
I'm
going on for years.
understanding, yeah, from what I'm understanding, Detroit, Michigan is behind because I think places like New York, and I'm not quite sure about Chicago, but all they stuff is underground. So when the
Right.
wind and stuff blow, they don't have outages like we have outages.
Okay, well, yeah, they definitely got to get it together, man, because I can remember since that Y2K bug, the citizens of Detroit has been going out of power. Every time it's I'm not gonna even say a major storm, but every time it's a storm, it almost seems like, some part of the town is being hit or being affected with power outages.
Yeah,
So that's not a good
that's
look.
it. Normally, when we have storms, I lose power at least 5 times through the bad weather months. So at least,
Okay, and while we talking, man, yeah, and that's horrible, man. Hopefully, DTE can get ahead of that, and and get the citizens of Detroit, better electrical solutions when situations like this hit. But before, and not to change the subject, but I want to talk about this situation, man. Because we've been talking about what's been going on with this young man. Who was surrounded by his white friends. I want to talk about the situation that happened out at Fairlane Mall a few days ago. Are you familiar with that situation? You had a group of I'm gonna just be honest, man. You had a group of YNs out there that had no conflict resolution, that were that were out there beefing, man, and it turned into gunplay. Give me your thoughts and your opinion on that. You had three that was shot, two ended up dead. Give me your thoughts and your opinion on that.
it's senseless murders. Things that could have been avoided. That's just it. Young people, like you said, YNs, that that's the way that they handle things. Is when I see you, bang bang, and I believe that when you go out and you do things of that nature, they should bring the chair right to your house, right
Yeah,
to your
because
house.
that was a horrible situation, man. And these were teenagers, they shouldn't even have had firearms at all, and this goes back to a conversation that, we talked about earlier, with parenting. It starts at home with parenting, so, and at the end of the day, you can't blame parents for everything that their children do, because at the end of the day, a parent can only be at one place at one time. You can't be with your children 24 hours a day, but it does come to a point where where you have to teach your kids morals, common sense, and just all around just standards, and neither one of these teenagers possessed it that over the weekend. They were shooting at a mall full of women and children and just people shopping for the holiday, man. Give me your opinion on that. What they had no regards, and then first and foremost, I don't even think they hit the targets that they were trying to hit. I think innocent people got hit and innocent people died. So give me your opinion on that, man. What is it with our youth that they cannot display conflict resolution?
I mean, I think when we was talking earlier about it, we was hitting a lot of key points, and the music was definitely, to me, the number one key point, because when I was growing up, I'll be 53, my birthday. When I was growing up, we had Run DMC, LL Cool J. These rappers didn't cuss. They didn't display violence in their lyrics. The rappers of today, they display everything that's not positive. And this is what our youth, this is who our youth look up to, and the videos that they see on their phone every day. Why O Block? I don't even know, is it O Block, Y Block? The
O
gangs in
Block.
Chicago. They look at those guys like stars.
Yeah, I agree. You hit it right on the nose.
So so when you got that going on, and these guys, they looked at like, hey, this he had so many bodies in, and they loved him. So I gotta get more
yeah, King,
bodies than
you
that.
talking about King Von,
Say it again.
the one you talking about King Von, the one rapper who got murdered
Yeah,
himself.
yeah, yeah. King Von and his whole little crew. All of them, they died stars. Seriously, like they got their flowers before they died, just simply by taking lives.
Yeah,
That's
man.
sad.
And what's so
It's
crazy,
sad.
bro? And we talked about this just a few. we talked. Yeah, it's very sad. We talked about this a few days ago. It's sad. We have to change the culture, man. What rap culture is doing, pretty much, it has turned. We have turned amongst our own selves. We're killing each other. That's what this music has done. It's hurting us more than it's helping us. It's gotten us to a point where we respect the rappers more than we respect, honest heart, honest 9 to 5, working man. You know what I mean? They would rather portray and want to be, like these rappers and entertainers, man. And it's leading our youth down the wrong road and the wrong path. And really, what it's leading them to these prisons.
Filling them up,
And that's another story.
filling them up.
Yeah, and like we just talked about in another previous show, these prisons are definitely, they have a spot. They just recently sued the government for not, and I forget what state, I have to look that up, for not filling up enough these prisons with inmates. So for those young men that committed that crime, they definitely have a place for you young men that don't know how to use conflict resolution. Because like I said, these prisons have contracts with these states to be able to fill these prisons up, and they want them filled up with you black men.
Yep.
Yep. So,
That's
so we
that's
have to
exactly
start
what's going
being
on.
able to use conflict resolution, talk our ways out of situations where it's been ending in gunplay. Because at the end of the day, man, this is what this, in my opinion, this is what this rap culture, this is what this rap music has done. It has changed the mindset of men and in our youth.
I mean, at this point, I just feel like if you got young kids that's influenceable, and you got to be responsible for what they're looking at on TV and their phone, because this what they getting, and this is what's going on. You can't be at work and watching your kids at the same time. But what you can do is block what they watching on the computers. And if you was the person that bought them their phone, make sure you monitoring that too, because that's what it is. I mean, you can't be everywhere, but you can talk to your kids and put things like that in place, so that they know, hey, my parents is, they not with that, and they showing me another way, because it's the music. When I was
Yeah,
coming
because it's
up,
a
we fought. We did more fighting than anything. So
yeah,
if anything, we were scared to go to school and fight. We weren't scared to go to school and lose our life.
right.
So
And it's almost like the youth of today are not afraid to. I'm not going to say to lose their life, but it's almost like they don't care. And I'm going to read a few of the comments. CC Motion 1998 said, "Salute, brother. What up with you, CC Motion? Long time no hear." Perry Gibson 419 said, "Such nonsense, shameful." Yes, and it's just a bad look for the community, man. So in my opinion, we have to be able to change the culture of our music. We have to get back to what made us great at one point. This whole rap genre. It's the not the producers, but it's the companies that's signing these rappers and enforcing them, to put out this motherfucking this deaf music, and that's what you need to call it, man. It's pretty much, deaf music, in my opinion. It's not doing anything positive for the youth. They don't come out with a positive mindset listening to this music. Only thing they can come out with is trying to, shoot a nigga, kill a nigga, sell drugs and things like that, man. And then it's just berating and just degrading our women. And now with the women music is degrading our men. So all
yeah,
together, man, we have the rappers have to be able to come together, and we have to stop supporting this shit, because as long as people are supporting and buying this shit, they're going to continue putting out this bullshit, and it's going to continue
yeah.
hurting our
Let me
kids in the community.
let me tell you a story. My mother, the first rap album I was happy to get, and I don't remember if it was used or brand new. It was the Sugar Hill Gang, and what they was rapping about was food and the day and their friends and how they learn how to rap and stuff like that. Versus what our kids and their kids have to listen to, because my daughter is she'll be 30 next year, so she listened to this generational rap and she caught up in that, and her kids gonna get caught up in that. So it's definitely a generational curse that we got to stop. I didn't grow up listening to that, so I was always like I was explaining to you in Bobby and Junior High School, Dr. Oden, they started finna play Fuck the Police, and they stopped that. So that was my first experience with uh rappers just saying
Fix your camera,
anything.
bro. I barely can see your face. There
Rappers
you
just
go.
saying anything. I'm sorry. Rappers just saying anything. That was my first experience with that. That was the NWA, F the Police. And I knew then that if they kept up with this type of music, it was going to change the world and it was going to be violent, because and it never stopped. So every record since NWA has been either promoting violence, sex, and murder.
Listen, we talked about that the other day. This music that came in with that crack era destroyed the black community alone. It had to do it. You can name two things that destroyed the community. It was the music and that crack era. And we talked about that. There should be some type of lawsuit. And we need to, and it's going to be a future show that we need to have some lawyers bring up some type of lawsuit against the government, because this shit was purposely done to the black community, and you can prove this shit. You can go back to how the music was before the 80s, and how there was really like before the crack epidemic hit. I'm not going to say the black community was thriving, but the black community was doing, pretty decent, at one point, before they ushered in this gangster music and they ushered in that crack epidemic. It totally destroyed one community, and that was only the black community. And like I said, we can prove that, that was a actual what's the word that I'm looking for? It was a planned thing that was done, to the black community, and it's still
The
going on to
last
this day.
And we can prove it because we definitely didn't bring in the drugs. We didn't bring in crack cocaine. That was definitely brought in by white people, and it destroyed, I'm going to say, probably 40 years of our people. I'm going to say my father and the people that he grew up with, it totally wiped them out. First heroin, then crack. So, and all of that was brought in by white people. It destroyed
Right.
our community. Yeah, it should be a lawsuit, and we can prove it that's what it did,
Right.
what happened. So hey, maybe
They've been deliberately doing things like this to our community, and it slowly but surely has been destroying the community. That crack era, we just, are now rebounding from that, from that crack epidemic. So like I said, man, they've done 50 years of targeting our people, and it's been going on way before that. But that's something that we can actually, prove with the whole how they changed the genre of our music, and change the mindset of our youth, to wanting to, we almost had like a love type of music or a positive type of music, that educational thing that, we always had some type of message or educational message behind the rap or the music. Now it's just, it's nothing but, portraying death, violence, and pretty much just, destroying the community altogether.
you remember the self-destruction movement,
Yeah.
BDP and all of that. See,
Self-destruction.
they was coming, they was trying to make us aware of what was going on right then, and it's way worse than when they was than that self-destruction movement. So uh yeah, we just got to keep being aware.
And what is it with
Yeah.
that? We keep trying to make our people aware of what's going on, and what the powers to be the moves that they're making on our people, and we just are not waking up to what the fuck what's going on, man. The same plays are being ran, on our people, and we're not realizing, or we're not waking up to see that, these same plays have been ran on us. They're just kind of like remixing everything, but it's the same shit.
Well,
So what is it with our people that we keep falling to these, to these traps, man, where, at the end of the day, it's costing us lives, financial, gains, and just a lot of, heartache and hurt.
Well, the saying is true. When in Rome, you have to be a Roman, and that's what happened to black people. We're around all these Romans, and we have to try to get along. You know what I mean? And that's what black people do. We try to get along instead of saying we fuck this. We tired of just getting along. We want a piece of the pie too.
Hey, and I want to ask this comment. Somebody made a comment, and I think this is the lady. Was this the lady Tupac was talking about? Maxine Waters that he wrote in his rap? Because I think it was. Remember, we had that conversation. You had a lady that was trying to warn us about this rap music, and I think it was Maxine Waters. At Brenda G10, she said, ask Maxine Waters who brought that crack into our communities. And I think Maxine Waters tried to she actually tried to stop Tupac with an album that he put out, because I think this was the lady who tried to warn us about, this gangster music, that it was going to be a problem, and we did not take heed to this shit. And 30 to 40 years later, look where we're at. We're at drill, this Chicago drill rap music. It's wiped out a whole nother generation of youth out there in Chicago. And it's spread it throughout the country now. Yeah, but I believe Maxine Waters is the lady that Tupac was talking about when she was trying to shut one of his songs down, but she tried to warn us. But Brenda, if I'm not mistaken, give me your thought on that. But yeah, man, at the end of the day, man, we have to be smarter. We have to realize that, a lot of these things are traps, and we fall into these situations, year after year. We have to make better decisions, about not falling into these traps that's being set. And that's another conversation that we're going to have, that we actually had, that we're going to continue to have. I'm going to continue to bring up these issues, every time they come at hand, because this is something that, that we need to continue to preach and talk to our peoples about, about falling into these traps, man. This whole rap era, man, it's pretty much, a setup and a trap for the youth. And that's in my opinion.
We need to get rid of this violent rap and this promoting all this different sexual behavior around kids and trying to change who they are by promoting things in music. It's a lot going on that that music is changing the way that our kids thinking sexually and everything.
And not just with the men. Talk about how the music has changed for the women. The women is even more, what's the word that I'm looking for? They're acting more manly than men are, with this music. You have women talking about give me head now. I'm like, what the fuck? When I first heard that analogy, I'm like, women are asking for head. I'm like, this is crazy. They're using the men terminology, but with these sexy reds and, the music that they putting out and they're portraying to our young women, imagine what the next generation of our young women are going to, be like.
I mean, it's like,
if we don't change this shit.
It's like our young men have nothing to look forward to, because when I was coming up, I used to have to date my girlfriends, take them to the show, ask their parents, could I take them to the show or take them out to eat and get them back at a respectable time.
You know what that's called, Big Hen?
Dating.
Yeah, it's called courting. That's what they used to call it back in the old days. You would court somebody, you know what I'm saying? And pretty much it's like vetting them. you know, you would actually get to know who they are, find out who they are before you actually lay down and have sex. But this new generation now, oh, they fucking on the first night. They don't give a fuck about vetting you. They don't give a fuck about courting you or dating you. Even the women just want to fuck on the first night. You know, listen, the sexuality of our people is out of control. You know, especially with our women, you know, and I'm quite sure we have some women in the comment section that can attest to that. You know, the women, you know, don't even care about degrading themselves now. You know, they're degrading themselves, you know, to the public.
Let me just say this from the clothes that they wearing from back in my day. You know, we used to have mood songs and all of that, but now, you know, everything is revealing. You don't even have to worry. I remember dating and like, wow, I could tell she had a nice body, but it wasn't so revealing that I seen everything. Now, it's nothing left to the imagination. You know,
not at all. You know, it's like they want you to see it before you even get it.
Yeah.
You know, you already see the goods before you buy them. You know, and that's why I respect, and this is what I do respect about, you know, the Arab community. They make their women cover up. You know, you're not going to see, or they're not going to expose themselves to nobody.
Yeah, you're not supposed to entice the whole Detroit, Michigan in one day.
Exactly. You know, and I'm gonna just be honest, man. Our women have lowered their standards to the point where they don't give a fuck what they got on when they walk outside of the house. You know, half of them are walking out half ass, butt naked. You know, ass hanging out, pussy sticking out. You know, and they know this shit.
Yeah, they making clothes now with pussy prints and dick prints. You know, it's just the world we live in now.
They got pussies that these women are putting down there to enhance their pussies. They got fake pussies that they walking around wearing to make it look like okay, it was Dolores Tucker who went against Pac. Okay, good looking. Okay, that's Scout 313. What up, though, Scout 313? I remembered Dolores Tucker. That was the one who went against Pac, who was trying to shut that down. And she knew back then what this rap music was gonna do. But if that's my homeboy, Skiggy 313, what up, though?
What up, Skid?
Yeah, but it was Dolores Tucker. Yep, that's who it was. Thanks for that, bro. But yeah, man, you know, they got fake pussies that these women are putting in their pussies wearing to make it look like they got a fatter pussy. You know, that's how much to this music and what they see on these reality shows, the mindset that, you know, our women have now. You know, that they walking around here with fake pussies to make their pussy look fatter, to entice us.
Yeah, it's no.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like seeing City every day.
What up, though, Skid? Yeah, no, it is. You know, and I've never thought that we would see, you know, a day like, I mean, not a day like this, but a time like this where you get women walking around here, you know, literally, you know, even on social media, you know, when you open up a page there, they got their legs wide open, trying to literally expose and show you their pussy. You know, it's like they want you to look, you know, so that's where we at with our women in today's time, to the point where our women are degrading their own selves. You know, it used to be a point where the men was only degrading the women. Now the women are degrading their own selves.
Yeah,
you know, and it's coming from the mindset of these rappers, these women that our young women are listening to.
Yeah, it's like we living in a common day Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. You know, and that's what it is. You know, but Skig 313, I mean, Scout 313, man, have you heard about, you know, originally we was talking about a situation where you had, you know, a young black man, 18-year-old black man who was celebrating the 4th of July, went out on an island, on a boat ride to an island with a group of his white friends, and he ended up dead. You know, that was one of the main subjects that we were talking about. And I don't want to get too far offhand, but you know, I'm going to speak a little bit more about that, Big Ken, and then we'll go in there to close out the show. But, you know, we have to get back to we have to get back to using our common sense. You know, when we're hanging out with a group of white friends, and you're the only black person. You know, because as time has showed us, you know, and these stories that we talked about and done over the years, you know, it's not a good thing. You know, and it's always sometimes end up deadly for that black person who's hanging out with a group of white friends. You know, but Big Ken, give me your last thoughts on this situation with the young man who ended up losing his life, ending up dead, who went out to celebrate the 4th of July with his group of white friends. Give me your last thoughts and your opinion on that.
I hope they get to the bottom of it and see exactly what happened, so he can have his family can have some justice. And like I said earlier in the show, uh, everybody knows Southern states. There's something definitely going on in the water down there, and it, you know, and it is not just a coincidence that black people is coming up hanging and dead in water and stuff like that. Two things that we don't like, most black people, is water and ropes. So we already know
Right. And
that's
that's a
something that
fact.
need to be investigated. That's how I feel about that. You can reach me
While
on the What Up
hey,
Though
look,
show on
and I
Freestyle
couldn't have said.
Friday.
There you go. You know what? My bad. Listen, I couldn't have said it no better than what you just said it. You know, those two things that black folks are pretty much, I'm not gonna say scared of, but you know, you know, the water, you know, and ropes. You know, those are, especially that rope. You know, like I said, at the end of the day, you know, it's most black men can barely tie a tie, let alone tie a loose to a noose to be able to be stable to hang themselves with. You know, so you know, the gig is up. You know, we know what's going on. We have to realize what's going on, and we have to do our own due diligence. You know, with this shit and going on. You know, because you're not finding white men hanging from ropes in the hood. You know what I mean? So this got
Right.
to let you know there is some shady shit going on, and we got to get down to the bottom of this shit.
Period. Point blank.
You know, so look, I don't have. Yeah, you know, point blank, man. You know, this has been going on for a while. Pretty much, it has never stopped. You know, since the lynching and hangings. You know, now with social media, you know, it's just been brought to the forefront. You know, and that's all that's been going on, man. You know, but look, I want to give my condolences to this young man's family. It was a horrible situation. You know, a horrible situation that happened to this young man. He was out there with a group of so-called friends, and he ended up losing his life. You know, they left him out there. They did not originally search for this young man, and then like a lot of people were saying on social media, the authorities has not questioned these men. They let them go. They should have been under arrest, you know, at least and been questioned, but none of that happened, you know. So hopefully when this autopsy report comes back, it comes back that you know, hopefully we'll get some answers when his autopsy report come back. But look, I just want to come on here and talk about this for a quick second, man. You know, this is another example of what's been going on throughout this country, you know, with this year, where, you know, a lot of black people coming up, ending up dead, you know, whether it's, you know, it's been lynching, whether it's been shot in the back by police, you know, it's just like really, there's no respect outside of the black lives, you know, for lives outside of the black community, for black lives. You know, so look, I don't have anything else to add. I want to thank everybody who commented, you know, and I definitely need you guys to make sure you continue to hit that subscribe button. We are less than 60 subscribers away from hitting that 1K. So I cannot do it without you guys hitting that button. I don't have anything else to add. It's another one. It's your boy Dame D, and we are out. Peace.
Peace.